Okay, today I want to review chapter 1 to the end of chapter 6 for ANP1. This is actually a study guide for anatomy and physiology, lab practical number 1. Okay. In the first picture, I want to show you the different body regions and the anatomical terms which we use for them. You can help me with this part. Okay, can you tell me what is number 1? What do we call number 1? This part is called cranial or cephalic part. Number 2 is fascial part. Number 3 is called cervical. Number 4 is called deltoid. If you can't see the picture, you need to go out and again join us. Number 5 is the axillary region or the armpit. Number 6 is the brachial. Number 7 is the antecubital. Number 8 is called antebrachial. Number 9 is the carpal. 11 is the metacarpal or palm of hand. And number 10 is called digits or digital region. In the trunk, you can see the thoracic, the abdominal, and pelvis. In the thoracic region, we have here you can see the sternal part, and you can see number 25, which are the pectoral. Here is the abdominal, and number 26 is the navel part or umbilical region. And number 28 is called inguinal region. Okay, what is number 17? What do we call number 17
Frontal?
here?
Would it be frontal?
This is the frontal part. Number 18 is
Orbital.
orbital, yes. Number 20, what do we call number 20?
Buccal?
We call it buccal, yes. Number 21.
Oral?
Oral.
21
Nasal.
is nasal,
Nasal?
and 22 is the oral part. And what do we call chin in the anatomy?
Mental?
Mental.
Mental. We call it mental region. Yes. And here you can see number 29. We don't have it in our lab manual, but we call it manus. Manus or hand. And here you can see the femoral region. Number 13 is the patellar. Number 14, who can tell me, what do we call number 14?
Cruel.
We call it sural region, yes. And number 15?
Tarsal.
Tarsal. Tarsal, yes. And number 16 are digital again. And the foot anatomy is called PES, P-E-S. So number 31 is PES or foot. And in the next picture, you can see some structures in the posterior aspect. You can see number 32. Number 32 is the occipital region. We don't have 33 in our book. What do we call 34?
Vertebral?
Vertebral, yes. We call it vertebral, yes. Number 35. your elbow. We call it olecranon. Yes, olecranon. Number 41 is the lower back. And what is number 36?
Gluteal.
Gluteal region. And the back of knee 37?
Popliteal.
Popliteal. Yes. And what about 42? Calcaneal. Yes, number 42 is the calcaneal. And what about our sole? What do we call the sole?
Plantar.
Plantar.
Plantar. We call it plantar.
Plantar.
Okay, any question on the body regions? The next picture talks about the directional terms. You know that number 1 means toward head. We call it superior. And number 6 is toward our feet or away from our head, and we call it inferior. In our limbs, upper limb and lower limb, we have proximal, which is number 4. It means near to the site of attachment, and distal means away from site of attachment. And about number 2 and number 3, number 2 is toward our front, and number 3 is toward our back. When we want to talk about toward the front, we need to use anterior, and when we want to talk about toward back, we use posterior. So these are some of the terms which we use in anatomy. In this picture, you can see different planes of the body. Planes are some imaginary sheets which we can pass through the body and divide the body. Number 1 is called coronal plane or frontal plane. The frontal or coronal can divide our body to anterior and posterior. Number 2 is the oblique plane. The oblique plane doesn't have any specific direction, and it has angle, as you see here. Number 3 is called transverse or cross-sectional. It can divide our body to upper part and lower part, superior and inferior. Then you can see number 5. Number 5 exactly past the midline of our body. We call it mid-sagittal. And number 4 is parallel to our midline, and we call it parasagittal. So these are the different planes. Mid-sagittal and parasagittal can divide our body to right and left. Mid-sagittal is can divide our body exactly to the same equal part, but parasagittal plane cannot divide our body into equal parts. So the parts which are created are unequal. And here you can see a tube. For the tube, we don't have frontal plane and sagittal plane because all sides of the tube are the same. And instead of frontal and sagittal, we can use longitudinal plane. And the cross section or transverse can divide the tube into upper part and lower part. So for the tubes, we don't have frontal and we don't have sagittal plane. This is the section of the brain. In this section, we cut the brain in mid-sagittal plane. This is the other section of the brain, which is transverse transverse or cross-sectional. And in this one, we have frontal or coronal plane. So these are the different cuts which we can make, and by these different cuts, we can see different structures inside the brain or in the other organs. In this picture, you can see the anterior view, and in this picture, you can see the posterior view. If I draw the midline here, the organs which are near the midline are called medial, and the parts which are away from the midline are called lateral organs. The structures which are near the surface of our body are called superficial, and the structures which are toward inside of our body are called deep. In this picture, you can see the correct anatomical position. In this picture, you see that this person is standing facing forward. The upper limbs are on both sides of the body, and the palm of the hand are facing forward. And as you see here, the feet are on the ground. This is the correct anatomical position from anterior and posterior view. This picture wants to show you the different body cavities. The body cavities in our body are divided into two parts. First, you can see the yellow part, which we call it dorsal body cavity or posterior body cavity. And the one which is blue and green is called anterior body cavities. The dorsal body cavity has two parts. Number one is called cranial cavity, and this is the cavity for our brain. And number two is the vertebral canal, and this is the cavity for our spinal cord. The ventral body cavity is divided by number 4, which is the diaphragm, to upper part and lower part. The upper part is called thoracic cavity, while the lower part is called abdominopelvic cavity. In the thoracic cavity itself, we have some subdivisions. And if I want to draw the picture here for you, I draw something like this. Imagine that this is your thoracic cavity. In your thoracic cavity, you have two smaller cavities for your lungs, right and left lung. These smaller cavities, which are in orange, are called pleural cavity. In the right pleural cavity, we have our right lung. In the left pleural cavity, we have our left lung. Between two pleural cavities, we have the elongated cavity, which is in blue. We call it mediastinum. And the mediastinum is the cavity where the esophagus and trachea can pass, and we have heart in this part. And the heart itself is located in the other cavity, which I draw it by purple. This purple cavity is called pericardial cavity. So in the thoracic cavity, you can see two pleural, one mediastinal, and one pericardial cavity. 4 cavities in one cavity. And the abdominopelvic cavity is divided to abdominal part and pelvic part. These are the major body cavities. In the cavities, we have the double layer serous membrane. Imagine that you have a heart and you punch the heart in the balloon, in the partially inflated balloon. And you can see that one layer of the balloon attached to the heart and one layer is farther. The layer which is attached to the heart is called visceral, and the one which is farther is called parietal. Between these two layers, we have the cavity. And in this cavity, we have a small amount of serous fluid. The serous fluid prevents friction of these two layers on each other. The cavity which is specifically for our heart is called pericardial cavity. You can see visceral and parietal pericardium. And between them, you have the serous fluid. The next part is about the tissues. In our body, we have four major tissues. The first tissue is called epithelial tissue, which cover our body from outside, and it can line the body cavities. The other one is connective tissue, and after that we have nervous and muscles, which you will learn about them in the next part of this semester. For this picture, you need to know that the epithelial tissue is located on the surface and the connective tissue is located deeper. Between epithelium and connective tissue, you can see the basement membrane. The epithelial tissue are avascular. They don't have any blood vessel, while the connective tissue have different degrees of vascularity. For the connective tissue, like proper connective tissue, we have many blood vessels, like the adipose tissue or areolar connective tissue. For dense regular connective tissue, like tendons and ligaments, we have few blood vessels. For supporting connective tissue, like cartilage, we don't have any blood vessel, they are avascular, but for the bone, we have many blood vessels. So vascularity is very different in our connective tissue. When we want to talk about epithelium, we should use first name and last name for epithelium. The first name of our epithelial cells are the number of layers. If your epithelium has only one layer, we call it simple. If your epithelium has more than one layer, we call it stratified. It doesn't matter if we have 2 or if we have 4D. When we have more than one layer, we call it stratified. This is the first name of our epithelium. The last name of our epithelium is the shape of the cells. Our cells may be squamous, they may be cuboidal, or they may be columnar. Squamous means flat, cuboidal means cube shape with the round nucleus, and columnar means tall and elongated with the oval nucleus. The first epithelium which I want to show you is simple squamous epithelium. In the simple squamous epithelium, as you see in this picture, we only have one layer of flat cells. The blue layer is the basement membrane, and beneath the basement membrane, we have connective tissue. This is the real picture of the simple squamous epithelium. As you see here, we only have one layer of the cells and our cells are flat. This is simple squamous epithelium. And number 4 here in this picture wants to show you the nucleus of the cell in the connective tissue. The simple squamous epithelium can be found in the location of our body where we need to have diffusion. For example, we have it in our air sacs or our alveoli. We have it in the kidney, in a renal corpuscle, when we want to filter our blood. And we can see it on the serous membrane. On the serous membrane, they have a specific name, which we call them mesothelium. So the simple squamous epithelium, which we have in the serous membrane, is called mesothelium. And the other name which you need to know is the simple squamous epithelium in the wall of blood vessels. In the wall of blood vessels, we call it endothelium. So endothelium and mesothelium are both are the names of simple squamous epithelium. The next epithelium is called simple cuboidal epithelium. In the simple cuboidal epithelium, you can see one layer of cube-shaped cells. And the cells, as you see here, are cube-shaped or a square, and you have a round nucleus in each cell in the center of the cell. Here you can see the basement membrane, and beneath the basement membrane, you have connective tissue. And here you can see the real image of simple cuboidal epithelium. In this picture, you need to find the lumen, and the layer which you have immediately after your lumen or free space is called epithelium. This epithelium is marked with number 1 here, and we call it simple cuboidal epithelium. Number 2 wants to show you the apical surface of the cells. Number 3 wants to show you the lumen. And number 4 is one of the cuboidal cell with the round nucleus in the center of the cell. We can see simple cuboidal epithelium in the renal tubules. And here is the other lumens which we have. And these lumens are lined with simple squamous epithelium. You see that one layer of flat cells can line this epithelium for you, line this lumen for you. The next epithelium is called simple columnar epithelium. In the simple columnar epithelium, you have one layer of tall and elongated cells. And in this layer, you can see oval nuclei, which are near the basal surface of the cell. They are located in the half base of the cell. And the apical surface of these cells can show you many microvilli. Microvilli are finger-like projections on the apical surface of the cells, and they can increase the surface area for absorption. We have this type of epithelium mostly in our digestive system. In this type of epithelium, as you see in this picture, you may have some goblet cells. These goblet cells are like wine glass, and they are full of mucus, and they can secrete mucus. Mucus can lubricate the surface and help the material easily slip over the surface and move without any friction and problem. And here you can see the real simple columnar epithelium. You have, as you see in this picture, you only have one layer of the cells. And all of your cells have oval nuclei near the base. You can see the cilia, the microvilli, which are on the apical surface of the cell. And these microvilli can increase the surface area for you. And between the cells, you may have goblet cells. These goblet cells can make mucus. And here number 4 is the connective tissue beneath the epithelium. In the next picture, you have non-keratinized stratified squamous. In our lab manual, we have keratinized stratified squamous, but this picture shows you non-keratinized. In this picture, you can see a basement membrane in the blue color, and you have more than one layer of cells. And we don't care about the shape of the cells in the deep layers. We only care about the most superficial one. And these superficial layers here are flat cells. When you have flat cells here, you call this epithelium a stratified squamous epithelium. And in the real picture, you have a stratified, and the last layer, the superficial layer, is flat. We call it a stratified squamous. In this stratified squamous, we don't have any keratin, which is a protein on the surface. And number 2 is the connective tissue. I have larger image of previous picture, and in this larger image I only want to show you the flat cells which we have on the surface. A stratified squamous. The next type of epithelium is called transitional epithelium. The transitional epithelium is a kind of stratified, but the cells which we have on the surface are dome-shaped cells. They are roundish cells. They are umbrella-shaped cells. And this specific shape of the cell help the epithelium to become stretched and provide more space. One of the key which help you to identify the transitional epithelium is some of the cells have 2 nuclei instead of 1. So these cells are called binucleated cells, and we can see them in transitional epithelium. We don't know why do we have these 2 nuclei. This is the anatomy of these cells. And this is the real image. When you want to identify this epithelium, first you need to find your basement membrane, which I draw it in the black color. Above the basement membrane, you have more than 1 layer, and you see that the superficial layer are umbrella shape. They are pillow-shaped cells. This is transitional epithelium. And if you pay attention to this cell, you can see 2 nuclei here. And the next epithelium is pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. Pseudostratified is fake stratified. It means that in this epithelial tissue, you only have 1 layer of the cells. But because the shape of your cells are different, the levels of your nuclei become different. So it resembles stratified, but all of your cells can reach the basement membrane. So we call it pseudostratified. In pseudostratified epithelium, most of our cells are columnar cells and they contain cilia. So we call it pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. Between the cells, columnar cells, you can see goblet cells. These are goblet cells. They can make mucus for lubrication of the surface. We can see this type of epithelium in the respiratory tract. The next part is about connective tissue. You need to know that. First, we have three types of connective tissue. We have connective tissue proper, we have supportive connective tissue, and we have fluid connective tissue. In all types of connective tissue, we have two specific and two principal parts. First, we have cells, and then we have extracellular material or matrix. Here you can see cells. Whatever you have out of the cell is called matrix, and the matrix is composed of two parts. We have fibers and ground substance. We have different types of cells and different types of fibers in our connective tissue. Here, for example, you can see macrophages, which can engulf pathogens. You can see fibroblasts, these green cells, which can make matrix for you. You can see mast cells. The mast cells can make inflammation. They are, as you see in this picture, they are full of granules. And these granules contain heparin and histamine. Heparin and histamine can make inflammation. In this picture, you can see thick fibers, which are in blue color. These thick fibers are called collagen fibers. They make your tissue strong, and your tissue can resist different pressures. You can see some thin fibers, which are purple in color. We call them elastic fibers. And you have some orange fibers here, which are reticular fibers, and the reticular fibers can make framework or meshwork of some lymphatic organ, like, for example, our thymus, our spleen, our lymph node, and also we have it in our bone marrow too. So this is the general feature which we have for our connective tissue. The other thing which you need to know about this picture is this picture shows you areolar connective tissue, and also this picture. In the areolar connective tissue, we have few fibers which are randomly organized, and the number of our cells and ground substance are more. In this picture, you can see number 1. Number 1 is thick fiber, which is collagen. You have number 2, which is the fibroblast. You can see number 3, the thin elastic fibers. By routine staining, which we have in histology, we cannot see and we cannot find reticular fibers. The reticular fibers need their own and specific staining procedures, which we call it silver staining. So in the pictures which you may have in the exam, you will not see any reticular fibers. In this picture, these 3 cells are called a mast cell, and they can make inflammation. So this is a picture of areolar connective tissue. The next picture which you have here is the picture of adipocyte. This is one fat cell or adipose cell. or adipocyte. In each fat cells, you can see one large droplet of fat and a very thin rim of cytoplasm around this droplet, and the nucleus which is pressed and pushed against the cell membrane. The adipocytes come near each other and make cluster. The cluster of adipocyte is called adipose tissue. The adipose tissue has many blood vessels. It's highly vascularized tissue. And here you can see the adipose tissue. In this picture, you see that we have empty looking cells. This whitish part is the fat droplet, and these are the nuclei which are pushed against the cell membrane. The adipose tissue can store energy for us because it's full of triglycerides. And at the time of need, we can break down these triglycerides and use the energy. The next type of proper connective tissue is dense connective tissue. And in this picture, you can see dense regular connective tissue. In the dense connective tissue, we have more fibers. All of these pink fibers are collagen fibers. You have more fibers than cells and ground substance. When your fibers are parallel and very well organized, we call them dense regular connective tissue, like the ones which we have in our tendons and ligaments. This is I will talk about it. I will bring the picture again and I will tell you why. And in this picture, you can see again the dense regular connective tissue. You see that all of your fibers are parallel together, and you have the flat fibroblast between the collagen fibers. So in this picture, number 1 is the fibroblast and number 2 is collagen fibers. This is dense regular connective tissue. About the adipocytes, look at here. This is one fat cell. If I want to draw it for you, this is like this. This black part is the cell membrane. Then you have a large droplet of fat. And here you can see the nucleus. You were born, for example, if you were born with a 1 million adipocyte, right now, when you are 25 years old, you have that 1 million adipocyte. The number of your adipocyte doesn't change, just their size change. When you eat more than your need, the cells become bulged. When you eat less than your need, your cells become shrink. And when these fat droplets increase in its size, it presses the nucleus against the cell wall. Do you understand? Okay, great. And the next type of dense connective tissue is called dense irregular connective tissue. In the dense irregular connective tissue, we have more fibers than cells and ground substance. But the important thing is our fibers are very randomly organized. They are in different directions. They don't have any specific direction. And we can see this type of connective tissue in the reticular layer of our dermis. After that, we have the supportive connective tissue. And the first picture is the picture of hyaline cartilage. In the cartilage, like the proper connective tissue, we have cells and matrix. And in the matrix, we have fibers and ground substance. But in this type of cartilage, hyaline cartilage, we cannot see fibers very clear. The color of our fibers and ground substance are the same due to their refractive index in the microscope. And we can see the matrix very homogeneous. So you cannot see fibers, but it doesn't mean that you don't have fibers. You have fine collagen fibers which are not visible in this cartilage. And the other thing which is important to know is your cells, which we call them chondrocytes, are located in the cavity, and the name of the cavity is lacuna. So this is chondrocyte, and it's located in the lacuna. This is the other chondrocyte in the lacuna. And here you can see the matrix. Here you have the real picture of hyaline cartilage. And in this picture, you can see the chondrocytes. These are chondrocytes which are located in the space of lacuna. And your matrix is homogeneous. You cannot see fibers in the matrix. This is the other chondrocyte. This is the other one. Hyaline cartilage. The next picture which I want to show you is about the bone. And specifically, I want to show you the compact bone. In the compact bone, as you see in this picture, we have the structure which we call it osteon. Please, I need to go out of the room and come back soon. So look at this picture. I will be back in 1 minute. Okay. In the compact bone, we have a specific structure which we call it osteon. The osteon is like the cross section of the onion, as you see here. And in the osteon, we have one part which we call it central canal, and the central canal contains the blood vessels. After that, you can see concentric lamellae of collagen fibers, like the lamellae which we have in the onion. And between these lamellae, you can see the osteocyte. These cells are called osteocytes, and these cells have many processes which we call them osteocytic process. So in this picture, you can see one osteon. And here we have many osteons, as you see in this histology image. The next picture which I have here is the picture of one osteocyte. This is one osteocyte. This osteocyte has many osteocytic processes. The osteocyte itself is located in the cavity of lacuna, and the osteocytic process are located in the canaliculi. So these ducts are called canaliculi. And you have a model in your lab which is very similar to this picture. In this model, we have many osteons. This is a compact bone, so we don't have any space. We have different osteons here. Between our osteons, we can see interstitial lamellae or interstitial system. Around the bone, we have circumferential system, and this circumferential system is called outer circumferential system. And around the medullary cavity, we have inner circumferential system. In each of your osteon, you can see central canal with the blood vessels. The blood vessels of your osteons are connected together here by the perforating channel. Here we have a perforating channel or perforating canal which can connect the central canal of our osteons. Around the bone we have periosteum, and inside the bone we have endosteum. These are the parts which you need to know about the bone. And here you can see a spongy bone and compact bone. Our spongy bone has porous appearance, while our compact bone, as you see here, is very dense, without any cavity and space. And inside the bone, we have medullary cavity, which is the location of our bone marrow. And this is the other picture of osteon. This is one osteon. You can see central canal with the blood vessels. You have concentric lamellae of collagen fibers, and between them we have osteocytes with their process. And the last part is the picture of the skin. Here you can see the skin model. For the skin, you know that we have epidermis or epithelium of the skin and dermis, which is the connective tissue. And beneath it, we have hypodermis. The hypodermis or subcutaneous fat is not actually a part of a skin, but it's located beneath the skin and it's full of adipose tissue. In this picture, you can see the hair follicle and the sebaceous gland which open to the hair follicle. You have the arrector pili muscle which can contract, which can go to contraction and erect the hair. You can see, please don't move the arrows on your screen. You can see the sweat gland. These sweat glands are called merocrine sweat gland, which open to the surface of the skin and they can cool off our body. These are the, and this one, number 6, is the apocrine sweat gland. The apocrine sweat gland is the sweat gland which we have in our axilla and also in our groin or inguinal region. And this sweat gland can produce the smelly sweat. And you see that the smell of the sweat in your armpit and in the rest part of your body are completely different from each other. And here you can see again the picture of the skin. Here, eccrine and merocrine are the same. Yes, Antonia. Here you can see the thick skin and thin skin. In the thick skin, we have 5 layers. We have first stratum basale, spinosum, granulosum, lucidum, and corneum. But in thin skin, which has hair, we don't have lucidum, and our corneum is very thin. And here you can see the histology of the skin. You can see the basement membrane here. Beneath the basement membrane, we have connective tissue, and above the basement membrane, as you see here, we have epithelium. Our epithelium starts with a stratum basale, then we have a stratum spinosum. After that, we have a stratum granulosum, then you can see a stratum lucidum, and then a stratum corneum. These are the different layers which we have for our epidermis. And our dermis itself has 2 parts. The superficial part of our dermis is called papillary layer, and the deep part is called reticular layer. The papillary layer is areolar connective tissue, while the reticular layer is dense, irregular connective tissue. Okay, this is the review of everything which you have in your lab from chapter 1 to the end of chapter 6. The things which you need to know for lab practical number 1.